here's a person who really became famous in this market, sitting next to Don Shelby on WCCO television for almost a decade. And the television news is driven by sensationalism and small sound bites. And almost by accident, while searching for programming that was wholesome for her children, she decided to create her own television program at that time where she allowed her to tell a story with a longer format. She sold it to Animal Planet, and that became the idea that started Tremendous Entertainment. So we're grateful to have her here. She has offices of the firm in Los Angeles and also in New York and here in Minneapolis. So please join me in welcoming the first speaker of the 2016 year, Colleen Needle Steward.
Thank you. Well, no pressure there. Thank you very much, Paul. Let me just say what a pleasure it is to be here, and I am so impressed with the number of people who get up and, every time I get up and drive somewhere in the dark, I'm heading to the airport, so to do that and come here and spend this time is just wonderful, and thank you for being here, and I'm so honored to be here with you today. And I was asked to speak about how I got where I am today. And if you're all expecting some sort of master plan, you're going to be disappointed. My story actually began under the covers, and I wasn't alone. And it's not what you think. When I was a little girl, I loved to read, and I couldn't read enough, and so I would sneak a flashlight under the covers at night, and I would read for as long as that light would last. And my parents wondered, what is happening with all the batteries in this house? But so I would sit under the covers and read stories about people who were going on great adventures to really exotic places around the world. And I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do someday, is just travel the world. I had no greater purpose than that. I just wanted to go see these wonderful places. And so that really, stuck with me for life. And so as I grew up, I eventually found myself at college. I didn't have any plan as to what that would be. And I didn't really connect the fact that I loved stories with how I was going to eventually travel and see the world. That didn't even dawn on me. So fast forward to college, I was at the University of Iowa, and I studied economics and finance, and how I thought that was going to get me to travel the world, I don't know. I had no plan, I told you. There is no master plan here. But I did know I wanted to get out of Iowa. I grew up in Des Moines, and so I wanted to go to the Mecca, and for me that was Minneapolis. So out of college, I needed to find a job. So I came to Minneapolis and I started applying and working through employment agencies. Again, I had no plan. And I eventually found a position that was available, and the counselor I was talking to was so excited, and he said, this is a wonderful opportunity. You're going to be selling hospital supplies, and we are going to put you in a brand new territory. It's never been developed before, and you're going to be wonderful. And he sent me back to Iowa. So there I was, selling medical supplies in Iowa. Needless to say, I wasn't very good at that. It wasn't what I was passionate about. And at that point, I really hadn't figured out what I was passionate about. But I knew that wasn't it. So my brother stepped in, and my older brother, and he said, what I think you'd be really good at, and I had never considered it. He says, I think you'd be really good at journalism. And there's this great school where you can get a master's at the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University. You should think of applying. And so I really credit my brother Gene for giving me that advice, because I went not really knowing what it was going to be like. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. And it all of a sudden opened my eyes to telling stories. So I grew up loving to read stories. Now it really opened my eyes to telling stories. And the universe works in wonderful ways. When I graduated from that master's program, a professor really encouraged me to apply for a certain job, and that was here in Minneapolis, where I wanted to be in the first place, at WCCO. And so I started my career here in Minneapolis in television news, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience and career. It was a great place to work. I had the ability to tell stories, and more than that, something that's not as available to people in local news today. WCCO had a tradition then of sending its anchors and reporters off to cover stories around the world. I mean, you just don't get to have that opportunity today. So there I was. They sent me off to Central and South America to talk about the rainforest. And then they sent me to Northern Ireland to cover stories on the religious strife between the Protestants and the Catholics. And then I went to Africa with a group of women who were returning to their roots in Ghana. And it was just absolutely fascinating for me, who had grown up dreaming of traveling, to be able to not only go there for the first time myself, but to bring stories back to people who had never really heard about these places. And then I finally found myself in New Guinea. And it was a store. I went and lived for 30 days with a group of priests, Catholic priests, from Minnesota who were working as missionaries with headhunters. These are not the people who find you jobs. Actually, they were former headhunters, and they were, thankfully, they had decided to quit that practice about 10 years before I got there. But they were wonderful, wonderful people, and they taught me so much about how to be grateful for everything you have, how to give thanks, thanks to God, and just thanks for the bounty that they had. And their version of wealth was so very different from ours, and it was really, really refreshing. But the thing I remember most about that experience was I traveled with a Catholic priest who I became a very, very good friend. And his name was Father Dave. And he said something to me, and it, Paul, you hit on this. This is what's so amazing about this, is he said, Colleen, the world, everyone reacts from two places. You either react out of love or you react out of fear. And so when you encounter somebody who's angry or frustrated, they're really reacting out of fear. And he goes, you can't change how someone chooses to express themselves, but you can certainly change how you react to it. And if you stop and think about it a minute, if someone's really angry or frustrated or whatever, I always try to stop and go, what are they afraid of? And it helps so much your ability to respond and to communicate with that person. So anyway, there I am at WCCO TV, and I happened to meet another person in my journey. She's here today, Gail Shore. You'll be hearing more about her later, but we were up at a governor's fishing opener in northern Minnesota, and here's a woman who had worked for the airlines throughout her career, and she would travel and has traveled to the far reaches of the world. You name it, she's been there, and she inspired me as well. And it suddenly dawned on me, these are the people that I want to tell stories about, people who are doing extraordinary things for the world. And unfortunately, I got frustrated because when you're doing news, you can tell you have a minute 10 or a minute 30 to tell a story. You can't do it justice. So it was that frustration and a purple dinosaur named Barney who really inspired me. My kids were young. I have 3 children, Annie, Jack, and Tommy, and they were not even in school yet, and I would watch children's television with them, and as Paul mentioned, got inspired to create a children's television program called Once Upon a Tree. I'm still anchoring news, but long story short, it was a story about teaching kids about nature and pro-social values, like how to share, how to get along with others. And as luck would have it, I set out and was able to sell it to the then fledgling Animal Planet, who today they have 100 million households. Back then they had 1 million. So they took a chance on us, and I discovered two things. I love telling stories, but I really didn't like working with puppets. So this was a puppet show. It was scripted. Fortunately, we brought in people from Sesame Street. So we had the director and the writer and the puppeteers from Sesame Street. They did a wonderful job, but it really wasn't in my skill set. And so I started looking around at some of the TV markets I would go to, and I saw there's a lot of, that was really the beginning of the whole cable explosion. And I saw that there was a lot of the type of program I like to do, which was factual programming, so not scripted, unscripted, talking about real people, real things, and also documentaries. And I thought, that's what I want to do. So we started pitching shows in natural history and science, and we started selling shows. And somewhere along that way, I made the decision that this is really what I want to be doing. And so I left TV news to pursue television production full time. And it was tough, though. It was really, really tough. As you can imagine, starting a television production company in Minnesota, there were not a lot of other production companies here. And so I made every mistake in the book. It was trial and error, trying to figure out what to do. All of my competitors were in Los Angeles and New York. They definitely had a big advantage. But I eventually met a man by the name of Andrew Zimmern. Don't know if you've heard of him. And he had stars in his eyes at the time, and we created a show called Bizarre Foods. But it taught me perseverance and patience, because we went out and shot what we call a little sizzle tape, and it was to demonstrate what the show would be about. I will abbreviate this, but I went and tried to sell it and was kind of turned away at most networks because they said no one's going to want to watch a fat, bald guy eat weird food. Eventually, Travel Channel took pity on us, and they said, yeah, we really like this idea and we like Andrew. But for 3 years, they would start and stop the process, to the point where the third year they came back to us and said, now we're really serious about doing a story. I said, or doing a show. I said, I can't get Andrew excited again. I mean, you have to really be interested. So we did a pilot, and a new general manager came in to Travel Channel right at that time. He didn't like it. He didn't like Andrew. He didn't like the show. But there was a friend of ours at that network, and he kept airing it. He was in charge of scheduling. And for 2.5 years, he would schedule that, and the ratings kept going up every time that 1-hour program aired. And finally, the day that general manager left and a new one came in, they ordered a series. And now that series is the longest running series on Travel Channel. We've done more than 200 episodes. We've traveled to just about every country around the world. So it's been great. After that, we took off and we started exploring other genres. We did science, we did health. We've really done programming in just about every genre. And but the one thing that I learned along the way, and while these 7 Fs, I really resonate with them, but I got a big problem with this one. Still working on fitness. But I resonate with them, but I have another one, another F. And it's called focus. When you're starting a new business, you're so desperate to bring in revenue that you'll do anything. You'll take on any kind of business. We were in the business of TV production, but we started doing industrials and commercial work because that brought in some money. And then we thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we became distributors and we set up a distribution company to distribute not only our programs, but everybody else's around the world. So we did that for a while. And then we thought, we're all familiar with school fundraising and selling gift wrap. We thought, well, wouldn't it be better to sell DVDs? And so we started a business called the Family Catalog to sell DVDs. And unfortunately, we were way behind the curve. That was when DVDs, shortly thereafter, were being phased out. So all of a sudden, we stopped and we said, what are we doing? We're doing everything but what we said we were going to do when we started this company. And so we started to focus. And we said, what would happen if we did nothing else but focused on what we were really set out to do? It changed our company, it changed our lives, and it made us get real about what kind of program we wanted to do. And it was what we wanted to stand for. And we chose a motto, which we call Where Character Matters. And the meaning behind that is we wanted to tell stories about people who were passionate about making the world a better place. And Where Character Matters also speaks to the people who work with us in making those stories. And we decided we are going to, and we'd been doing it all along, but we hadn't announced it to the world yet. We said we're going to do only uplifting, inspirational, inspiring, but entertaining programming. And we're only going to feature people who have a great message. I don't know about you. Have you noticed the TV landscape lately? It really caters to the lowest common denominator. And if you're not a train wreck, you can't get on TV. And seriously, and somehow being rude is really good. That'll get you a TV show. I think our politicians have kind of succumbed to that too lately, haven't they? So we set out to do just great television. We told the networks that's what we want to do. And believe it or not, that resonated with them as well. And then we did, this is what I think is so crazy. We did what I think is common sense, what everybody should do, and I thought everyone did. We did and delivered what we said we were going to deliver. And that was like, they had never seen anything like that before. And so we started to build a great reputation. And today we're doing stories about, it runs the gamut. We did a couple programs on a farmer in Iowa who's so worried about our food supply, he invented a new type of pig. It was an extraordinary story we did for National Geographic. We're working with Oprah Winfrey now in her network doing a docuseries with Holly Robinson Peete and her husband Rodney, and who's a former NFL quarterback. That is such an inspirational story. It starts March 19th on OWN, so if you have a chance to see it, please do. But one of the turning points for us, we have lots of meetings with networks, but usually after they buy the program, it's like go away and just make it. Oprah asked us to come to lunch. First of all, having lunch with Oprah is really, really cool. But she did something that no one else has ever asked us at a network. They're all worried about what your program is going to do for their ratings, and they should be. That's how they make their money. But she went around the table and she said, I want to know what your intention is. I want to know what your intention is in making this show. And I had never had a network executive ask me that question before. So that was a really, really neat thing, and we had a lot of fun, and it was really inspirational to us all to answer that question. Well, I don't know, couple of things that I think have helped us be successful at Tremendous Entertainment. As I said, we learned to focus. It took us from, doing roughly $2 million a year in just a very short amount of time to doing $24 million a year in revenue. So it made a huge difference financially. But key was, I think, the people who work with us. I'm so happy that our company is headquartered here, because I think that set the bar. We have just really engaged, wonderful people who care desperately about what they're doing, and we're a family. We set out about a year ago to work on how can we engage more with each other, how can we engage more with our community, and how can we engage with our clients. And it was a wonderful experience. And out of it grew the most amazing culture and climate. We'd already had it, but we really started putting a name to it. Today we have craft clubs and beer clubs and people who walk dogs in the afternoons for a shelter that's right next to us. And we've gotten to know each other as family. And the people who work for us have really become an extension of my own family. And, I recently had a discussion. What is your definition of success? And everybody's got a different definition. But mine was the ability to tell stories about inspirational people around the world but also spend time with my family and my friends. That was really, really important to me. And my kids and my husband, who was a reporter at WCCO, everybody kind of grew up with cameras around. And so my kids were very accustomed to that. And they got involved early on with tremendous entertainment. Oh, my son Jack, you know, when he was in high school, would clean the little office we then had at the time. And so they all participated one way or the other. But I wanted to kind of end with a little story about my son Jack. Jack had a buddy, and they met when they were in second grade, and they used to love to explore the woods behind our house. So fast forward, Jack goes to college at the University of Montana, and shortly thereafter, his buddy Colton joins him there. He transferred, and they used to, for fun, go to Yellowstone National Park and Glacier National Park because we had a family history of traveling with them and taking our kids to national parks. And so that's where they spent their weekends, and how cool is that? But Jack would always take a camera, and he would take video of their adventures in the park and nature and all that sort of thing. Didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it until after they graduated from college, and they went on a trip to Zion, and they went up Angel's Landing, and I don't know if you know anything about that, but it's a very treacherous climb. And they shot a piece on that, and they showed it to me, and I was like, wow, you guys, this is really good. And all of a sudden, my mind started going, because I am in the business of TV, you know. And so I said, this could be a great web series. I never considered it for TV, but I said, this could be a great web series. And we have agents who represent us in LA. They help us sell the programs. So I brought this video to them, and I said, what do you think? Tell me the truth. Do not worry about hurting my feelings. Do you think this could be a web series? And they said, well, we'll get back to you. And they came back about a week later, and they go, we showed it to everybody in the firm, and I'm sorry, we really don't think it's a web series. They go, we think it's a TV series. I said, you have got to be kidding. I was floored. Well, we met a company called Litton who controls programming blocks on Saturday mornings on 4 different networks. And they saw the value in a show about exploring the national parks and all the adventures you can have there. And they partnered with us, and we premiered Rock the Park, starring my son Jack and his buddy Colton, on the CW a year ago. And nobody had really done, neither one of them had done TV before. And I think the pivotal moment in that series was about the 4th episode in, and they were going to explore or climb a mountain. We thought it was a hill, but it was a mountain, in North Cascades National Park, which is in Washington State. Not many people visit it. It's like called the American Alps, just incredibly jagged, snow-covered mountains. So my staff, who was also new at planning expeditions in the national parks, didn't really know what they were up against. And so when the crew arrives, they look up at this mountain, and we had 2 photographers, a producer, a sound guy, and a production assistant. And when they looked up at the mountain, the 2 photographers said, we're not doing it. The producer said, I'm not doing it. So here we're left with Jack and Colton, an audio guy. It's great to have audio, but you need pictures. And this young production assistant who had just graduated from college. And so Jack goes, I'll be the producer. And Colton then announced at that point that, I forgot to tell you guys, I'm afraid of heights. And then, so they set off, they were going to climb this mountain. Now, unfortunately, we do plan meals for all of our expeditions. They arrived like on a pallet. It was 2 days worth of boxed lunches. You can't take those up a mountain. This was a technical climb. So unbeknownst to us, they left them behind, bought a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a bottle of honey. And that's what these poor kids ate as they climbed that mountain for 2 days. And that production assistant picked up the camera. He had never used it before, and he shot this. And I will tell you, the result was amazing. It was heart-pounding. It was drama. gorgeous pictures. It was the best story I think I have seen on television. And apparently, other people agreed. We won a National Emmy for that show. That didn't have a producer and did not have camera operators, and by some miracle they were able to do that through perseverance. So to me, I can stand here today and say I truly have my dream job. I didn't always know what that was going to be, but now today I can tell you that it's telling stories with the best people, people who are making a difference in the world, and good people who want to tell those stories. I get to work with my family. I didn't mention it before, but my son, Tommy, has joined the crew of Rock the Park. He's one of the camera operators. He goes on every adventure. That show moved this year to ABC on Saturday mornings, and throughout this year, about 90 million people will watch that show on ABC. And we had a call from the Secretary of the Interior, Sally Jewell, asking if she could come on. We just premiered that show a couple weeks ago, and we're now talking to the White House. And President Michelle Obama will be joining us, we hope, on a future episode. So didn't plan on it. I'm living my dream job, and it's even though I didn't plan it that way, like all good stories, I think this one had a happy ending. So I love those happy endings. Thank you so much for.
Wonderful. So when I first did the research on Colleen, I was just struck by the idea of where character matters. So I'd like you to discuss in your roundtable discussion, where do you see the idea of where character matters around you and where you're and how you're living and working today? Ready, set, go. I just have to admit, this is kind of an out-of-body experience for me, because for a decade, I watched her interview people.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what? Look at me, Mom. So I absolutely love listening to the speeches with the intent of asking questions. So my first question is back to 7Fs, and that is, obviously the where character matters comes from a deep place.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, how is your faith alive in your work?
Oh, it's so alive. My family is, we all go, well, as they were growing up, all my kids and my husband and I would go to church together, and we're at Westwood Community Church in Chanhassen, which is a really vibrant Christian community. And I have to tell you, I take notes every week, because what I'm hearing there applies so beautifully to running a business, managing people, trying to inspire people. And it really has been great in really helping me to recognize the goodness that is everywhere and finding ways through stories to share that with other people. But it all starts, I have to tell you, I look forward to it every week, because I think it makes me a better leader from what I'm hearing and how I can apply it.
I have a similar experience. The very first book I wrote, I was really scared. I was really worried that I'd be criticized for these ideas I had, and so I started taking sermon notes. And after about a year of taking sermon notes and looking at them, I was like, wow, I have a book here.
Yeah.
I basically wrote the first book in church.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was amazing,
That's
right?
good.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
awesome. So you talked about your business. So I'm a business owner, 7 years right now, and I have my some of my kids involved in my business as well. What's the best part about being the CEO, the owner of this business of yours?
For me, it's the people. It's who I get to work with. As I said, we have an extraordinary group of people, few who are here today, who really will go above and beyond for each other, first of all, and then for the company. We've had a really great experience in Los Angeles, where that is not a culture where people necessarily care about each other, or but our company there has been a beacon, and it has attracted so many wonderful people who love being a part of that mission, because you can't find that everywhere. So, and then the people we tell the stories about. They're so inspirational. And then, of course, working with my family. I mean, that's been a thrill. I mean, they're on one show we do, but we do a lot of them, but that's always fun to know they're there as well. And by the way, all my kids, for various reasons, moved to Los Angeles. So they all live there doing different things. And so that's one of the great benefits. I get to visit them a lot when I go out.
Yeah. Well, you are the first speaker that we've had who's mentioned Oprah, the Obamas, and winning an Emmy.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm just saying.
It's a good life. It's a good life.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, wow. We're in Little Minnesota right here.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what's it like to win an Emmy?
Oh my gosh. You could even find it on YouTube someplace because we made absolute idiots of ourselves. We were sitting at the ceremony and they had 66 awards to give out, and I think we were number 63. So it's all evening long, and there was Jack and Colton, who didn't really know enough to know getting nominated for an Emmy. We'd never been nominated before. So it was a huge, huge, huge honor, and I kept trying to couch their expectations, say, it's an honor to be here. It is an honor to be here. And I could just tell from the looks on their faces, they were just hoping and praying that this was going to happen. So when they came time, it was for Outstanding Travel Program. When it came time to announce that award, all of us just got quiet. And there was about, between my family and a lot of the employees there were about 18 or 19 of us. And so I just thought, it was so much nerves. And the presenter said, and the Emmy goes to, and she got the roar out of Rock the Park. We heard that, and we shot up out of our seats. I mean, it was chaos. It was so much fun. It really, really was fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thrill. I know.
Yeah.
You can never replicate that first time. I
Yeah.
mean, we were insane, and it took us so long to even get up to the front. It was really great.
Yeah, so raise your hand if you want to win an Emmy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Great.
Well, last question. So as a little girl, you dreamed about travel.
Yeah.
I know you've been around the world many times. What's the one place you can think of that we should just go because it was so special?
It's really tough to pick one, so I'm going to have to pick a few.
That's okay.
If you ever get a chance to go to Africa, I love Africa. That is such a special place. Special people. If you ever get the chance, it's such an epic adventure too, if you're into that. So that would be one. And a place that we have found a lot of solace, and maybe a lot of you have been there, is a place called Sanibel Island in Florida. And we have a tradition, my family, my husband and I and our kids have gone at least once a year, sometimes twice. And we eventually, just about 4 years, bought a place down there. So that is our kind of respite. We go there. It's not an exciting place. It's a place to relax and walk the beach and just enjoy the outdoors and nature. So those are Africa and Sanibel. So put that on your list.
Oh, okay. Yeah, call your travel agent, right? Well, thank you so much for being a part of our Good Leadership Breakfast.
My pleasure.
Julie?
My pleasure.